The storm outside mirrored the one raging inside Damian Blackwood's penthouse office. Glass walls gleaming with the skyline of New York City, but cold, like the man seated behind the mahogany desk. He tapped a pen against the armrest, brows furrowed as his assistant Jordan stood stiffly before him. "My sister's wedding is in 4 days," Damian muttered. "And my mother's already threatened to disown me if I show up alone again." Jordan cleared his throat. "Sir, there are options." Damian narrowed his eyes. "Options?" Jordan hesitated. "A professional. Someone who can play the part. Charm your family. Keep up appearances." Damian scoffed. "You want me to hire an actress?" "No, sir. A companion. Elegant, discreet, contractual. She signs an NDA, plays your wife for the weekend, and disappears afterward. No strings." Damian leaned back, the corners of his mouth curving slightly. Not quite a smile, more a challenge accepted. "I don't do emotions, Jordan. You know that." "Which is why this is perfect," Jordan replied. "She gets paid, you get peace, and no one asks you why your heart's still locked in a vault." Damian gave a final glance at the city below, a kingdom he ruled with logic and dominance. "Fine," he said. "Find her." 5 subway stops away, Lena Carter was washing paint off her fingers in the back of a cramped art classroom, unaware her entire world was about to flip. Her phone buzzed with a voicemail about another overdue medical bill. Her mother's condition was worsening, her savings were gone, and her dreams of running a gallery had been traded for part-time teaching and living paycheck to paycheck. Just as she turned off the tap, her friend Melissa burst in, phone in hand. "Lena," she gasped, "you have to listen to this. I think it's the weirdest, and maybe the most ridiculous job offer of your life." Lena raised a brow. "I'm listening." Melissa grinned. "How would you like to pretend to be a billionaire's wife for 3 days?" Lena laughed. "What, like in a rom-com?" Melissa's smile only widened. "Exactly like that, but real life. Rich guy, massive paycheck, no commitment." Lena blinked. The words sounded surreal, too outrageous to believe, until she thought about the unpaid hospital invoices waiting on her kitchen table. 1 weekend of pretending. She could survive anything for a weekend. She didn't know the man who'd hired her would unravel every wall she'd built. She didn't know pretending would lead her straight into the one thing she never expected to find again: love. Damian Blackwood stared at the glowing skyline outside his penthouse office, his jaw clenched, fingers drumming impatiently against the mahogany desk. The email on his screen blinked at him like a warning flare. Subject: Final RSVP. Elena's wedding +1? From Mother. He sighed. Elena, his younger sister, was getting married in Positano, an opulent affair that would bring together the crème de la crème of high society. Politicians, tech moguls, influencers, CEOs, the whole circus. And thanks to years of headlines branding him a cold-hearted bachelor, everyone was waiting to see if the elusive Damian Blackwood would finally show up with a woman at his side. "No," he muttered aloud. "Not happening." He hated these charades. Love was a distraction. Feelings, liabilities. The last time he let someone close, they'd sold his secrets to a rival company for a taste of revenge. Ever since, his heart had been locked behind titanium walls. Still, this wedding was different. Elena mattered, and showing up alone would draw gossip and, worse, pity. He needed a wife, a temporary one. 2 days later, Damian sat at Café Brio, a trendy downtown spot far beneath his usual scene. But this wasn't about preference, it was about tracking down her. The waitress who'd once spilled coffee on his $12,000 suit and had the audacity to say, "If you don't want stains, maybe don't wear tuxedos to brunch." Lena Carter. He spotted her through the crowd. Fiery auburn hair, dark jeans, a notebook sticking out of her apron, and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much too young. She was taking orders at a corner table, smiling warmly at a pair of elderly women. That smile, unscripted, real, perfect. She walked by his table without noticing him. "Miss Carter," Damien said, his voice low and deliberate. Lena stopped in her tracks, turned, and blinked. "Oh, Mr. Blackwood. You're back. Want me to spill something else on you, or are you good for today?" He smirked. "I'm here with a proposition." "I don't date billionaires," she said, grabbing her pen. "Especially the ones who stare like they're calculating my net worth." "It's not a date." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit. 5 minutes." She hesitated, curiosity battling her pride. Finally, she slid into the chair. "If you start talking about feet pics or sugar daddies, I'm throwing this water in your face." Damien chuckled, a rare, genuine sound. "I need you to be my wife." Her eyebrows nearly left her forehead. "I beg your pardon?" "Fake wife," he clarified. "For 4 days. My sister's wedding. Italy. High-profile event. You play the loving wife, smile for some photos, and at the end, I wire you $250,000. Lena stared at him, stunned. Then she laughed. "I must be dreaming. Did Elon Musk just offer to pretend marry me for a weekend getaway in Europe?" "I'm not Elon Musk." "You're worse," she said, standing, "and insane." "Wait." He opened a leather folder and pushed a contract toward her. "Everything's outlined. No intimacy required. Just public appearances, a few rehearsed anecdotes, and zero emotional entanglement." "Why me?" she asked, arms crossed. "Because you're real. People see it. And you're not the type to crumble under pressure. I need someone unpredictable. Someone who doesn't worship my bank account. And you figured a broke waitress with $87 in her checking account would say yes?" He met her eyes. "No. I figured a struggling artist with a dying mother would consider it if it meant saving her family." The words hit like a punch. Lena's chest tightened. "You've done your research." "I always do." She sat back down slowly. "What happens after the wedding?" "We fly back. You disappear from my life. I'll even throw in a non-disclosure bonus." Lena studied the contract, heart racing. Her mom's medication alone was thousands a month. They were drowning. She had no backup plan. No miracle. And here it was. "I need 2 days to think," she said quietly. "Take one. I leave Friday." By Friday afternoon, Lena was sitting in Damien's luxury town car, staring out the tinted window at the airport runway. A private jet hummed quietly, polished and ready. "I feel like I've been kidnapped by a classy mafia don," she muttered, as Damien slid in beside her, crisp in his designer suit. He handed her a thin velvet box. "Open it." Inside sat a diamond ring the size of her thumbnail. Lena gawked. This thing could pay off the national debt. "It's cubic zirconia," he said smoothly. "Relax." They flew across the Atlantic, reviewing details. Her fake backstory, Ivy League graduate turned wildlife photographer, met Damien at a charity gala. Favorite wine, Malbec. Anniversary, April 9th. "You made our wedding date your sister's birthday?" Lena asked, grinning. "She'll love it," Damien replied. By the time they landed in Italy, Lena knew everything about his childhood, his fabricated love story, and how to fake a perfect couple photo in under 10 seconds. But nothing prepared her for the villa. It was a sprawling coastal estate draped in white roses and golden lights. Elena met them at the entrance, her eyes widening with joy. "Damien," she squealed, pulling him into a hug. "You brought her." Lena smiled politely. "Oh my God," Elena whispered. "You're stunning. You must be Lena. I've heard so much." Lena glanced sideways at Damien, who nodded ever so slightly. She wrapped her arms around Elena. "I've been dying to meet you too." As the evening rolled on, they met dozens of guests. Every smile Lena gave, every hand she shook, was part of the role, but somehow, pretending to be admired, seen, adored, felt warm. Damien was a different man here, calmer, protective. He gently touched the small of her back when introducing her. whispered compliments in her ear, smiled for cameras. But when their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them, something that didn't feel fake at all. That night in the villa's guest suite, Lena changed into silk pajamas and wandered out onto the balcony, overlooking the Mediterranean. The wind carried salt and jasmine. She breathed in deeply. Damien knocked and stepped in, his tie loosened, shirt slightly unbuttoned. I wanted to say. He paused, eyes searching hers. You did well today. Thanks, she said, voice soft. It felt weird, pretending to be loved. He tilted his head. Is that what it felt like to you? Lena blinked. You're good at acting, that's all. He walked closer, slow and careful. So are you. They stood inches apart now, the night pulsing around them. I have rules, he said. No blurred lines, no confusion. Good, she whispered, eyes locked with his. I like rules. But when his hand brushed her cheek, the electricity was undeniable. For a moment, it felt like time folded in on itself. Then Damien stepped back, the mask snapping back into place. Good night, Lena. She watched him walk away, heart thudding, and deep down, she knew. The line between real and fake had just started to blur. The Italian sun rose with soft warmth, casting golden rays through the lace curtains of the villa. Lena stirred in her bed, the events of the previous day dancing like a dream in her mind. Except it hadn't been a dream. She really was in Italy, posing as the wife of Damien Blackwood. And last night for a moment she thought he might have kissed her. But he hadn't. He'd walked away. Lena sighed, brushing a lock of hair from her face as she slid out of bed and wrapped herself in a robe. On the vanity lay a schedule for the day: brunch with the bridal party, a family yacht outing in the afternoon, and the rehearsal dinner in the evening. The role of Mrs. Lena Blackwood was in full swing. At brunch, the women gathered around a long white table draped in florals and fruits. Elena was radiant, laughing easily, a mimosa in hand. She kept pulling Lena closer, introducing her as her fabulous sister-in-law, and gushing over their love story. One of Elena's cousins, Margot, eyed Lena over the rim of her sunglasses and asked when she knew Damien was the one. Lena hesitated only a second before offering a rehearsed smile, saying it was the third time they met, when he brought her coffee with her exact complicated order. Then she knew he was paying attention. The table swooned. A man who listens, someone gasped. Lena relaxed. Maybe she was good at this. After brunch, Damien joined her by the water's edge as the family prepared to board the yacht. He wore dark sunglasses and a navy button-down, his presence magnetic without trying. His hand grazed the small of her back as he helped her aboard. She wasn't sure if it was for show or if he simply forgot they were pretending. He murmured that she was winning hearts. She replied that she aimed to please, sipping a sparkling lemonade. He turned slightly toward her and asked what she was thinking right now. She admitted she'd never been on a yacht before. He gave a half smile and asked, "And?" She answered that she didn't hate it. Damien looked at her then, really looked. The breeze tangled her hair, and for a moment something unreadable crossed his expression. He reached over, gently tucking a strand behind her ear. The touch lingered. He told her she wore this life well. Lena didn't respond. Her heart was beating too fast. The rehearsal dinner that evening was even more extravagant. Fairy lights wove through the lemon trees, the tables were decked in candles, and a string quartet played in the background. Damien's mother, Margaret Blackwood, finally cornered Lena near the wine bar. Margaret said she had surprised them. Lena braced herself and asked in what way. Margaret replied that Damien usually chose women with a certain polish, society girls and heiresses. Lena seemed different. Lena smiled politely and said she'd take that as a compliment. Margaret studied her and asked if she was in this for the money. A dangerous question. Lena's spine straightened. She said she was there because she loved Damien and whatever came with that was secondary. Margaret's eyes narrowed, but she nodded slowly and said he was different around her, softer. Lena blinked. Margaret stepped closer and warned her not to break him because she might not realize it, but she had started to matter. Before Lena could respond, Damien appeared at her side and slid an arm around her waist. He greeted his mother coolly and asked if they were interrogating the guests now. Margaret kissed his cheek and said she was just making conversation. As she walked away, Lena whispered that his mom thought she was there for his money. Damien shrugged and said most people were, but she also said Lena mattered to him. He looked at her, a shadow flickering in his gaze, and asked if she did. Lena laughed, deflecting the intensity, saying she didn't know because he was a tough read. He replied quietly that he wasn't the only one. They were interrupted by a toast, and the moment passed. But later that night, in the quiet of their private villa suite, Damien poured them both glasses of wine and sat on the edge of the balcony. He told her she handled today well. She noted he'd said that before. He said it kept being true. They sat in silence for a few moments, the Mediterranean breeze swirling around them. She asked if he had ever been married before. He said no, but he tried once. She left when the prenup landed on the table. Ouch, Lena said. He added that it was better she left before the vows. Damien turned the question on her, asking if she'd ever been in love. Lena hesitated, then said once. He left when her mom got sick, said she was too distracted. He wasn't wrong. She didn't have time for candlelit dinners and beach dates when she was working 3 jobs and begging hospitals for payment plans. Damien's expression darkened with something like guilt, or was it empathy? She explained that her mom was the reason she said yes to this. She needed the money. She hated herself for even considering it. But then she met Damien. And? He asked. And he wasn't the monster the tabloids made him out to be. He gave her a small smile and told her not to spread that around. She looked at him, heart thudding, and asked, "What happens if this starts to feel real?" His face changed. The walls went back up. He said it wouldn't. This ends after the wedding. His voice was final, but his eyes lingered on hers too long to match the words. The wedding day arrived in a blur of white, gold, and laughter. Elena was a vision in lace and pearls, tears in her eyes as she walked down the aisle. Damien stood beside Lena, hand resting on hers for the photos, the soft pressure of his touch sparking flutters deep in her chest. They danced at the reception, spinning under a canopy of stars. Lena told him he cleaned up well. He whispered that she was breathtaking before he could stop himself. They stood too close for too long. When he leaned in, her breath caught. But before their lips could touch, Elena stumbled over, wine in hand, giddy and glowing. She asked to steal the bride's brother for a moment. Lena stepped back, breaking the moment, and told him to go. Family calls? As Damien walked away, Lena felt something she hadn't planned on feeling. Loss. Real, aching loss. That night, after the last toast and final song, Lena stood alone in their suite, her suitcase half-packed. Tomorrow the charade would end. Damien walked in, unbuttoning his cufflinks. He told her they leave at 10. She nodded and said she'd be ready. He stood still for a moment and told her there was a car waiting downstairs. Her brows furrowed, and she asked, "Now?" He hesitated and said she was free to go. He'd wired the full amount, plus a bonus. She didn't owe him anything. Lena's throat tightened. She said she thought they were flying back together. He said this was the agreement. Clean break. She asked if that was it, just like that. He said it was better this way. For who? She asked. Silence stretched between them like a chasm. She stepped closer and asked what he was running from. He replied quietly that he wasn't running. He was protecting them both. From what? She pressed. A possibility that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't all pretend? He closed his eyes, jaw tense. He said he couldn't afford to want something he couldn't control. Then you'll never have anything real, she whispered. She picked up her bag, walked past him, and paused at the door. She told him she wasn't pretending. and then she was gone. 3 weeks had passed since Lena walked out of the villa in Italy. 3 weeks since she left Damien standing alone in their honeymoon suite with a suitcase full of unspoken feelings and a bank account now generously padded with guilt money. She was back in New York. Same studio apartment, same fire escape, same skyline that once felt filled with dreams but now seemed grayer, colder. The money had paid off her mother's medical debt. Lena enrolled her in a state-of-the-art physical therapy program and got her the home care she deserved. That part brought peace. But nothing had prepared Lena for the hole that Damien's absence left behind. Because pretending to love someone is easy. It's walking away when you've accidentally made it real. That's the hard part. Damien hadn't reached out. No texts, no calls, no, "How are you?" or "Hope you're well." He'd disappeared behind the same steel walls she'd first met him behind. But Damien Blackwood wasn't fine. He was angry. At himself. At her. At the world. His return to New York had been a blur of boardroom meetings and PR stunts. But even with million-dollar deals flowing across his desk, his mind was still caught in a Tuscan villa, on a balcony under the stars, with a woman who challenged everything he thought he knew about himself. He'd hired her to fool the world. She ended up fooling him. Late one night, Damien sat in his penthouse office looking out over the city with a glass of scotch in hand. His assistant, Clara, peeked in. She told him he had been there since 6 a.m. He muttered he was working. She told him he was stalling. He looked up and asked what she meant. She stepped into the room and said he'd been off his game since Italy. He insisted he was fine. Clara disagreed. She said he hadn't laughed in weeks, hadn't smiled, not really, that he even shut down the company retreat because it reminded him of Lena. Damien stiffened, saying the conversation was inappropriate. Clara said so was falling for Lena, but he did. He didn't answer. Clara softened her voice, asking why he didn't just tell Lena the truth. He replied that truth didn't change the contract, didn't undo the lie. Clara agreed but said it might give him a chance to write a different ending. Meanwhile, Lena was navigating a different kind of chaos. A talent scout from a fashion magazine had seen photos of her at the wedding, posing with Damien looking like a modern Grace Kelly, and reached out to offer a modeling contract for a bridal feature. Lena laughed when she got the email. She told them she wasn't a model, but they insisted she was exactly what they wanted: elegant, authentic, and the story sold. She needed the money, yes, but something about the offer felt like another performance. Still, she said yes. And the day of the photo shoot, as she slipped into a white gown and stared at herself in the mirror, she felt that ache return. The gown reminded her of Italy, of vows that weren't real, of feelings that were. After the shoot, Lena walked the streets of Manhattan in sneakers and a trench coat over her dress, her hair still pinned up. She wandered aimlessly until she found herself at the edge of Central Park. That's when she saw him. Damien, standing near a fountain, hands buried in his coat pockets, staring directly at her. For a heartbeat, she thought she imagined it. But then he started walking toward her, purposeful, eyes locked, as if every second apart had led to this moment. He began to speak, eyes trailing over the silk peeking from beneath her coat. She cut him off, her voice trembling, telling him not to say, "Beautiful." He replied softly that he was going to say, "Unreal." Lena looked away and asked why he was there. He answered that he made a mistake. Her throat tightened as she asked which one, hiring her or letting her leave. He didn't blink and said letting her leave. The breeze rustled the trees behind them. Lena folded her arms and said he paid her to pretend, and she played the part. Why did it matter now? Because, he said, it stopped being a part. Somewhere between her meeting his mother and calling him out on his fear, it became real. And he didn't know what to do with that. She whispered that he could have said something. He told her he thought he was protecting her. From what? She asked. From him. From this life. From a man who doesn't know how to love properly. Every woman before her wanted the name, the money. She saw through it. She saw him. Lena said she didn't want his money. She wanted him. He stepped closer and said he wanted her too, but needed to earn the right to say that without a contract between them. She blinked, lips parting. Damien pulled something from his coat pocket, a tiny folded square of paper. It was their fake wedding photo, one snapped secretly by a cousin during the dance. They looked happy, because they were. He said he carried it every day because even if it was staged, the way he felt wasn't. Lena looked at the photo, then at him. She whispered that she left because she didn't want to be another name in his file, another contract fulfilled. He said she wasn't. She asked what she was, then. He stepped so close she could feel his breath. He said she was the one who made him believe he could be better, that love doesn't have to come with terms and conditions, that maybe happy endings exist, even for people like him. Lena's eyes welled with tears. She said, "Then prove it." Damien did. He took her hand right there in the park, dropped to one knee. No cameras, no witnesses, no grand gestures. Just a man, asking a woman not to leave again. He said he didn't want fake vows. He wanted real ones. He wanted the mess, the laughter, the fights, the late-night takeout. He wanted every morning to begin with her beside him. He asked her to marry him, for real this time. Lena stared at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. She whispered he was insane. He smiled and said he was honest. She laughed through her tears and said yes. God, yes. Later that evening, back in Damien's penthouse, he pulled out a crisp envelope from the safe. He said this was their contract. Then he tore it in half. She gasped, asking if he kept it. He grinned and joked it was for blackmail material. She smacked his arm and called him terrible. He said, and hers, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like truth. They spent that night wrapped in each other. No lies between them, no secrets, no obligations. Just the kind of love that sneaks up on you, quiet, unexpected, and utterly unstoppable. 2 months later, the Blackwood estate in the Hamptons was once again alive with color, laughter, and the fragrance of fresh peonies. But this time, the event was no charade. No scripted vows, no backroom agreements, just love. Real love. Lena adjusted the lace sleeves of her custom ivory gown and stared at her reflection in the full-length mirror. Her makeup was soft and glowing, her curls pinned delicately. And her heart? Unsteady in the best way. Her mother, now healthier and radiant in a dusty rose dress, stepped into the room and told her she looked like she walked out of a dream. Lena smiled and admitted it still felt like one. Her mother came closer and took her hand, reminding her that she had always carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, and it was about time someone carried her. A gentle knock at the door interrupted them. It was Evangeline. She asked to steal the bride for a second. Lena gave her mother a quick hug, then followed Evangeline onto the veranda where the Atlantic breeze swept across the white rose arrangements. Evangeline acknowledged they hadn't gotten off on the right foot, but she wanted to say thank you. Lena, surprised, asked what for. Evangeline explained that Lena had healed her brother. Damien had always been brilliant, powerful, terrifying in business, but emotionally unavailable since their father died. Lena had cracked through that, and she had done it without asking for anything. Lena blinked away tears and said she hadn't expected him to love her back. Evangeline smiled and said, maybe that's why he did. Inside the grand garden hall, Damien stood at the altar in a classic black tuxedo, nervously adjusting his cufflinks. He wasn't thinking about press coverage, investors, or image. He was thinking about the woman who made him laugh at himself. The woman who made silence feel like home. The woman who had said yes, not to his wealth, not to his name, but to him. As the string quartet began playing a soft melody, the crowd rose. Damien's heart skipped a beat when he saw her. Lena, walking toward him slowly, each step carrying the weight of everything they had been through. Her eyes never left his. The world fell away. He barely heard the officiant's opening words. Then it was time for the vows. This time they had written their own. Damien went first. He admitted he had been a man who believed love had to be measured, managed, or avoided entirely. He thought affection was weakness and vulnerability a liability. But Lena, pretending to be his wife, had felt more real than anyone ever had. He didn't just want to love her. He wanted to be worthy of her love every day for the rest of their lives. Lena swallowed hard and said she had taken a job out of desperation, never imagining it would lead her to someone whose heart was buried so deep. Even he didn't know it was still beating. Damien had shown her that the scariest love is often the truest, the one that forces you to grow, that doesn't come in fairy tales but in quiet acts of showing up. She promised not to run, not to pretend, and to be his. Fully, freely, finally. The officiant smiled and pronounced them husband and wife. For real this time. Lena laughed through her tears as Damien dipped her into a kiss, the crowd erupting with cheers. Later that night, under a canopy of string lights, they shared their first real dance as husband and wife. No cameras, no business deals, just two people who had defied the odds. Damien leaned in, resting his forehead against hers, and told her she was stuck with him now. She teased that the contract ended months ago. He smiled and said it did. Now it was just them. No more pretending. 1 year later, the Blackwood Foundation Gala was packed, the room glowing with gold decor and elegance. But the most talked about moment of the night wasn't the $10 million donation or the celebrity guest list. It was the moment Lena Blackwood took the stage, cradling her tiny baby bump, and announced a new initiative to provide scholarships for low-income women pursuing creative arts. Damien watched from the side of the stage, pride flooding his chest. She was fearless, magnetic, his muse, and his match. As the room rose in applause, he walked up to her and took her hand. He whispered that she was glowing. She smirked and said it might be the baby or the third cupcake she had just had backstage. He laughed and told her she had made their house a home, and had made him a man he never thought he could be. She looked up at him and said he had given her the fairy tale she never dared to want. Together, they looked out at the crowd. Proof that the best things in life aren't planned or purchased. They're found in moments of honesty, in courage, in the beautiful mess of two broken people choosing each other, over and over again. And this time, it was forever. 1 year later, the sprawling garden of the Blackwood countryside estate shimmered with the golden light of early summer. White blossoms crowned every archway, tables were set with ivory linens and peonies, and laughter floated through the air like music. The occasion was the Blackwood Foundation's anniversary gala. But this year, it wasn't just about charity. It was about legacy, family, and love. Lena Blackwood, now glowing with a serenity and strength only time and healing could bring, stood in front of a crowd of dignitaries, artists, socialites, and scholars. She wore a soft lilac gown that flowed gently over her rounded belly, her hand resting protectively on the child growing within. Damien stood off to the side, eyes locked on her, his once impenetrable face now open, softer, prouder, full of awe. Lena spoke to the crowd, sharing that her life had changed in the most unexpected way, not just because she had fallen in love with a man she was once hired to deceive, but because through that deception she had found truth and purpose. She announced that the Blackwood Foundation would now offer full-ride creative scholarships for underprivileged young women in the arts, because every dream deserves a chance no matter where it begins. The room erupted in applause. Damien walked up beside her, slipped his hand into hers and kissed it in front of everyone. He leaned close to whisper that he once believed control kept him safe, and contracts protected him. But she had taught him that real love begins when the walls fall. Lena, smiling with glistening eyes, responded in kind. She had once believed love was only for other people, but he had made it real. They turned to the crowd together, two people once worlds apart, now inseparable, no longer pretending, no longer hiding, just living proof that even the most unlikely love stories can come true, not because of fate, not because of fairy tales, but because two broken hearts were brave enough to choose each other, even when it didn't make sense, especially when it didn't make sense. And so, under the setting sun and a sky filled with promise, the billionaire and his once fake wife stepped forward into a future that was anything but scripted. It was real, and it was just the beginning. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Bye. See you in our next video.